Hello, welcome back to my series, The Decades of Action Challenge, inspired by a series that had been done by Razorwire Reviews and Forkerball called the Epic Film Challenge. They were looking at a book called 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die, choosing some of those entries, watching the films and making videos about them. I, however, take my source material from A History of Violence, which is a series of essays written by Tom Breihan and posted at avclub.com about what Breihan considers the most important action movie of each year, starting with 1968 moving forward to the present, which would make it 50 years. Last time I updated on the list, the ongoing list that Breihan has carved out for himself and the rest of us, he picked 300 by Zack Snyder as his pick for most influential, most important action movie of 2006. And it didn't come out in 2006, and luckily a few commenters pointed that out to him. I don't know why I didn't think of that. And so he changed his choice to Casino Royale, which means that I guessed Casino Royale right, and he moved 300 to 2007 where it's supposed to be, which means I guessed that right, guessed that right too, which means my correct guesses now stand at 64%, starting with 1983. I didn't try to guess any of the ones that came before then. Yeah, so that's like my highest average so far. That's great. Anyway, so Casino Royale and 300 are going to be movies that I'll be rewatching when I get to those particular years. The next article that he posts should be next week, I think? Yeah, a Friday, a week from today. That'll be on 300, and we'll see, he'll tease what his next pick will be for 2008, and it'll probably either be Iron Man or The Dark Knight. I'm guessing The Dark Knight, we shall see. So my last video was on The Rock by Michael Bay, and that was a movie that I didn't like very much at all. I really don't like Michael Bay's style. At least I really didn't like it back then. I found it irritating. Now, Breihan's pick for 97 was the John Woo movie, Face Off. John Woo had made two American movies prior to this one. After he'd left it all on the table with Hard Boiled in 92, he then came over to the States. He worked for Jean-Claude Van Damme on Hard Target. A movie which I enjoy. It's not a great movie, but I enjoy it. And then a movie that I enjoy not as much, Broken Arrow, with Christian Slater and John Travolta as the bad guy. And after that, that was a nice big hit. You know, it was a very successful film, and so Paramount hired him to do Face Off, which was intended to be a futuristic thriller, but John Woo decided, no, let's set it in the present day. The plot basically being, pretty outlandish in terms of these types of scenarios. One of the reasons Breihan picked this movie, not only because it's what he considers the most John Woo-like of all his American movies, but also because it took sort of that high-concept situation, that ridiculous situation, and cast a lot of really great actors to give it, as much credibility as possible. And he feels like Face Off is sort of the pinnacle of that particular trend. And after that, we move on to other trends, I guess. I'll be reading about that and hearing about it in the weeks to come. He calls this basically a rabid scenery-munching competition because you have Nicolas Cage and John Travolta as the two leads, and they are acting their guts out, basically, throughout this entire movie. What I read is that Travolta started shooting his part a few weeks before Nicolas Cage because Nicolas Cage was busy shooting Con Air. And then he got his hair extensions cut and he came on board and he looked at what Travolta was doing and he tried to, match the intensity and fervor, I guess. It really is nicely cast as far as those two leads. I mean, they're great in their parts, and they make it very, very enjoyable, no matter how crazy the idea is. And it is ridiculous. As I was talking about The Rock before, I was talking about the style of it and how I didn't agree with it and everything like that. I mean, it just felt wrong to me. And you could say the same thing about Woo's style. It's also very excessive. The difference is I find Woo's style palatable and Michael Bay's style not so palatable. So there you go. Not to say that Face Off is a more credible movie. It isn't. It's not even, as credible. Even Speed has more credibility than Face Off. Face Off is about a terrorist, basically, who's hired to blow up a location in Los Angeles, a highly populated location. He sets the bomb with the help of his brother, who's the guy who built the bomb. But then what happens is they're found out by the feds, and the feds find them at the airport, and the brother, Pollux, played by Alessandro Nivola, is taken into custody, and the terrorist, Castor Troy, played by Nicolas Cage, is rendered unconscious. So the federal agent in charge of the whole case, Sean Archer, is played by Travolta. He's like, thank God I finally got this guy, the guy that killed my own son like 6 years ago, took him away from me. I've been living in hell ever since then, because I lost my son, and now I've got him, and he's gone, right? But then, of course, he finds out about the bomb. And they've got Pollux in custody. They've got the little brother in custody, but they know that this guy won't talk to any of them about the location of the bomb. So some doctors with some radical new surgical procedures come to him and say, hey, how about this? Since we've got your nemesis here unconscious, and the brother here won't talk to anybody but him, how about we perform a little surgery and make you look exactly like him? We'll reshape your hair and body a bit, to make you look more like him. We'll cut his face off, basically, cut the skin of his face off, and then cut your face off, and we'll put his face on yours. And then we'll plant a microchip in your throat that makes you sound like him when you talk. Okay, that could never happen. But they do it, of course. And so the great part is, once that Travolta's character, Archer, who's now played by Nicolas Cage, goes to the prison where the brother is and finds out about the bomb, but lo and behold, the terrorist, Castor Troy, wakes up from his coma and immediately calls up his minions and gets them to kidnap the head doctor and put Travolta's face on his. And it wasn't just that, of course. They had to do the whole thing with the hair. They had to do the thing with the voice as well. And apparently all this can be done perfectly without any problems by one doctor, right? Now that's the other really implausible thing about that. But as it happens, that works out perfectly well. So what you have is Travolta and Cage basically trading characters. The movie starts off with Nicolas Cage playing the bad guy, and he's in Vampire's Kiss territory, with his over-the-topness. Meanwhile, Travolta's like ultra serious, and that's something that he can do really well. Just like very, very po-faced. And then they trade parts, so now Travolta is getting to do his Broken Arrow act again, where he gets to play the flamboyant villain, and Nicolas Cage is now in action hero mode, which he had been for the previous two movies, The Rock and Con Air. So it works great. It's totally absurd, but it works really nicely. It's really, really lots of fun. Yeah, some of the set pieces in this movie are crazy, especially the one at the end. One of the other problems with this movie is that they don't hide the stuntmen very well. Nicolas Cage wears a Caesar cut, and none of the stuntmen have their hair as short as him, and so you can easily spot them. It's really too bad that they are so easily noticeable. But the stunts themselves are very impressive, including the big stunts at the end where you've got two guys basically standing on the hood of a speedboat, and the speedboat hits some obstruction, and the two guys go flying through the air. They get flung through the air and onto the beach, and the boat flips end over end and lands and explodes. Apparently they did that for real. I mean, that's an impressive stunt. That's really impressive. All the stunts during that sequence are really impressive. I hadn't mentioned in previous videos, but MTV's Movie Awards show, they started giving awards for Best Action Sequence, and Terminator 2 got one its first year, and the second year Lethal Weapon 3 got one. And this year Face Off won, and John Woo was there in person to accept the award. He talked about how the stunt guys almost got killed during that scene. I'm like, I believe it. That sounds like pretty dangerous work right there. When you have guys diving off of a boat right before another boat crashes into it, and they sort of built a ramp inside the boat to make the thing fly through the air while the boat explodes. I mean, it's really impressive, And there's a lot of gunfights like in the usual John Woo movie. It is certainly the most John Woo-like of the films that he made here in the States, and I would have said that that it's like the perfect American John Woo movie, but it really isn't, because if you look at The Killer and you look at Hard Boiled, the whole scheme of that is that you've got two guys on opposite sides of the law, and one of them's a crook and one of them's a cop, but the crook has actually, you know, got some nobility to him, and they eventually team up to face a common threat, and that happens in Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So if Woo had directed Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that would be like the perfect American John Woo movie, but he didn't. Doug Liman directed that movie, and he did a great job. I love Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It's a terrific movie, but it would have been even better if John Woo had made it. It would have been, like, perfect. So as it is, yeah, Face Off has issues. There are, you know, problems here and there, but, you know, I like a lot of it. I really do like a lot of it. It's lots of fun, and the actors really help sell this. Joan Allen plays Travolta's wife. She's really good in it. You know, she talked about how this is like the coolest movie she was ever been in. And I'd say that was true probably right up until The Bourne Supremacy. She's in The Bourne Supremacy too, and that's probably the coolest movie she's ever been in. But this is certainly the most, yeah, it's something else. After Woo did this movie, he did Mission Impossible 2, which was an even bigger hit, but I didn't like that movie very much. And then he did Paycheck with Ben Affleck, which nobody likes, I don't think, which is really too bad. And now he's, you know, back in his home country making movies again there. So it's a shame he's not still making movies here, making action movies. I wonder what John Wick would look like if he had done it, you know. Lots more slow motion, probably. So, yeah, I've had a really busy week. I almost didn't think I could take the time to make this video, but I wanted to do it on Friday on schedule. So I hope that you enjoyed it. And I'll be back next week with Breihan's pick for 1998, which is Blade, starring Wesley Snipes. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you again next time. Take it easy.